الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا أنفقوا مما رزقناكم من قبل أن يأتي يوم لا بيع فيه ولا خلة ولا شفاعة. وقال الله سبحانه وتعالى: والذين يكنزون الذهب والفضة ولا ينفقونها في سبيل الله فبشرهم بعذاب أليم يوم يحمى عليها في نار جهنم فتقوى بها جباههم وجنوبهم وظهورهم هذا ما كنزتم لأنفسكم فذوقوا ما كنتم تكنزون. وقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: بني الإسلام على خمس: شهادة أن لا إله إلا الله وأن محمد رسول الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة وصوم رمضان وحج البيت، أو كما قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. صدق الله العظیم. محترم بزرگوں، دوستوں اور بھائیوں، زکوٰۃ کے متعلق آپ نے اعلان میں پڑھا ہے فقہ الزکوٰۃ کا آج مجلس ہے، اس لیے بات چیت کا انداز عام بیان کا نہیں ہوگا، بلکہ اس میں علمی گفتگو اور علمی مسائل ہوں گے۔ اللہ سبحانہ و تعالیٰ نے مسلمانوں پر دو بڑی نعمتیں عطا فرمائی ہے، ایک یہ ہماری جان ہے اور ایک مال ہے۔ جان بغیر مال کے رہ نہیں سکتی، مال بغیر جان کے آدمی کما نہیں سکتا۔ جان بھی اللہ کی ہے، مال بھی اللہ کا ہے۔ ہمیں جان بھی جو دی ہے وہ اللہ نے دی ہے، اور مال بھی جو دیتے ہیں وہ اللہ سبحانہ و تعالی ہمیں عطا فرماتے ہیں۔ اور کمال یہ ہے کہ اسلام کی بنیاد بھی 5 چیزوں پر رکھی ہے، جیسے میں نے ابھی آپ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کی ایک حدیث بیان کی کہ اسلام کی بنیاد اور اسلام کے پیلرز جو ہیں وہ 5 ہیں۔ اس میں سے ایک تو شہادتین ہے کہ اللہ کے ایک ہونے کی ہم گواہی دیوے، اور رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کے رسول ہونے کی گواہی دیوے، جس کو ہم شہادتین کہتے ہیں۔ شہادتین کے بغیر کوئی مسلمان نہیں ہو سکتا، کوئی مومن نہیں ہو سکتا، اس کا تعلق عقیدے سے ہے۔ اس کے علاوہ جو 4 پیلرز کہے ہیں وہ ہیں نماز، روزہ، زکوٰۃ اور حج۔ یہ چاروں عبادت کا تعلق جان سے ہے اور مال سے ہے، بعض کا اس میں جان سے ہے، بعض کا مثلا نماز ہے، نماز کا تعلق جان سے ہے، جانی عبادت ہے۔ اسی طرح روزے کا تعلق جان سے ہے، جانی عبادت ہے۔ زکوٰۃ کا تعلق مال سے ہے، مالی عبادت ہے۔ اور حج کا تعلق دونوں سے ہے، جان سے بھی ہے، مال سے بھی ہے۔ یہ جانی عبادت بھی ہے اور مالی عبادت بھی ہے۔ اللہ نے یہ 4 عبادتوں کو جن پر فرض ہوتی ہے ان پر فرض ہو کر اپنا بہت بڑا انعام فرمایا ہے کہ اس کے ذریعے تم میری جنت کو کمائیں گے، تم میری جنت کو لیں گے، تم میری رضامندی کو لیں گے۔ اس کو دوسری جگہ پر اللہ نے فرمایا: ان اللہ اشتری من المؤمنین انفسهم واموالهم بان لهم الجنہ، کہ اللہ نے مومنین سے اس کی جان اور مال جنت کے بدلے میں خرید لیا ہے، کہ ہم اپنی جانی عبادت کریں گے، مالی عبادت کریں گے، اور اس کے بدلے میں جنت اللہ سے لیں گے۔ اللہ نے تو ہم سے یہ سودا کر لیا ہے، جانی عبادت پر بھی اور مالی عبادت پر بھی جنت عطا فرمانے کا وعدہ اللہ سبحانہ و تعالی نے دیا ہے۔
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So our respected Imam Sahib, Hafidahullah, started off with the ayah of the Quran. He praised Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send salutations upon Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam, and then started off. And he said that, as you may have heard or read the poster, that the discussion today will be regarding the fiqh of zakat. Hence, the discussion today or the talk today will not be like a normal lecture. Rather, it'll be discussion regarding zakat and the fiqh of zakat. And he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with two great blessings. One is that of our life, our soul, our body, and one is that of our wealth. And both are in need of each other. Without a life, without a soul, you can't have any wealth. Without wealth, it's difficult to live and to go about your life. So they are both in need of each other, and these are both blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And through these blessings, we attain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It mentions that there are 5 pillars of Islam. Besides the first one, which is just shahada, to believe, to have the aqidah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one, that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the messenger of Allah, the final messenger of Allah. After that shahadatain, the remaining 4 pillars have to do with either one of these two blessings, either with your body or with your wealth, with your financial side of the life. And they are fulfilled, these actions are fulfilled with either one of these two. So you look at zakat, this is an ibadah, a worship that is fulfilled through your wealth. Salah is a worship that is done through your body. Hajj is a worship that is done through both of them. Right? Fasting is a act of worship that you do with your body. So there are some that are connected to the wealth, some that are connected to the soul and the body, and some or one that is connected to both of them. And in return of this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises Jannah. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran that He has purchased, He has taken from you, purchased from you your life, amwalahum wa anfusahum, your wealth and your lives, in return of Jannah. So inshallah, to attain Jannah, if we utilize these blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the correct manner, then this will lead us to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's happiness.
जान तो अल्लाह ताला ने सबको दी है, लेकिन माल की तक़सीम में अल्लाह की हिकमत होती है। अल्लाह फरमाते हैं वल्लाहु फ़द्दल बअदकुम अला बअदिन फ़िर रिज़्क़ फ़मल्लज़ीना फ़ुद्दिलू बिराद्दि रिज़्क़िहिम अला मा मलकत अयमानुहुम फ़हुम फ़ीहि सवा अफ़बिनिअमतिल्लाहि यजहदून। माल की तक़सीम में अल्लाह ने अपनी हिकमत से माल अता फरमाया है, सबको इक्वल नहीं रखा है। और दुनिया की जिन कौमों ने कुछ इज़म क्रिएट किए और सबको इक्वल रखने का जो कोशिश की दुनिया में, उसमें वो कामयाब नहीं हुए, इसलिए कि वो फितरत के ख़िलाफ़ है। अल्लाह ने जो ऐलान किया है कि फ़द्दल बअदकुम अला बअदिन फ़िर रिज़्क़ि, अल्लाह ने रोज़ी देने में, माल के देने में एक को दूसरे पर फजीलत रखी है। किसी को कम दिया है, किसी को ज़्यादा दिया है, किसी को मालदार बनाया है, किसी को गरीब बनाया है। और उसमें अल्लाह ताला की बहुत सारी हिकमतें हैं ये तक़सीम करने में। ये हिकमतों का मौका नहीं है, वरना बहुत लंबी बात हो जाएगी। एक दूसरे के साथ मुवाख़ात और भाईचारगी से होती है। अगर सभी अपने तौर पर बिल्कुल इंडिपेंडेंट होंगे, कोई किसी की ज़रूरत पर हाजतमंद नहीं होगा, तो फिर आपस में मोहब्बतें नहीं होगी, आपस की हमदर्दियाँ नहीं होगी, आपस की एक दूसरे की खैर खाही हो, एक दूसरे से कोई ताल्लुक़ नहीं होगा। वो अपने माल के नशे में होगा, या अपने माल के नशे में होगा, मुझे तेरी क्या ज़रूरत है, तुझे मेरी क्या ज़रूरत है, कोई ताल्लुक़ दरमियान में नहीं हो सकता। इसलिए अल्लाह सुब्हानहू व तआला ने अपनी हिकमत कामिला से माल की तक़सीम में एक को दूसरे पर फजीलत दी है।
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given life to all, and in terms of the other blessing, which is that of wealth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not made everyone equal in that. So life everyone is equal in that, everyone has been given a life, but wealth not everyone has a equal amount. And there is great wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this. And even if people try to equally distribute the rizq and the wealth in the world, it has never worked, and it perhaps will never will work. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَاللَّهُ فَضَّلَ بَعْضَكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ فِي الرِّزْقِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given preference to some over the others in terms of sustenance and risk. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given some more and some less. And again, like the Shaykh said, there is great wisdom in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's distribution of wealth. One such example is that a person or people would show compassion and mercy to each other if they didn't have or if they were equal in wealth, then this quality would not be apparent in people. So we see people who are in need, we have relatives who are in need, we have siblings who are in need, right? And we assist each other, we show compassion, we show mercy. If everyone was equal in terms of the worldly life, material life, then nobody would have this quality of compassion, mercy, amongst each other, and everyone would be indulged, involved in their own daily lives, enjoying the luxuries of the world. So there are many wisdoms that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept in this. One such wisdom is this, that this creates love between the brothers.
इस तमहीद के बाद मैं अब असल मसाइल पर फ़िक़्ह पर आ जाता हूँ कि जिन लोगों को अल्लाह ताला ने माल दिया होता है, जिन लोगों को अल्लाह ताला ने माल दिया होता है, और जैसे मैंने कहा कि ज़कात एक माली इबादत है जिसको अल्लाह ताला ने फ़र्ज़ किया है, तो अब हमें ये समझना है, ये देखना है कि कौन कौन से माल पर ज़कात फ़र्ज़ होती है और कितने मिक़दार पर फ़र्ज़ होती है। अब यहाँ पर हमें निसाब को देखना है। निसाब का मतलब एक अमाउंट कि जहाँ तक पहुँच जाए तो फिर ज़कात फ़र्ज़ हो जाती है। तो निसाब अलग अलग होते हैं। एक तो जानवरों का निसाब है, कोई बकरियाँ पालता है, ऊँट पालता है और जानवर है, उसमें भी ज़कात होती है, उसको हम यहाँ पर बहस नहीं करेंगे। इसी तरह ज़मीन की पैदावार है, उश्र और खैरात जिसको कहते हैं 10वां हिस्सा या 20वां हिस्सा ज़मीन की पैदावार का देने का, उसको भी हम बहस नहीं करेंगे। इसके अलावा ज़कात जिन मालों में फ़र्ज़ होती है वो, इसके बाद ज़कात कब अदा करना फ़र्ज़ होता है, किस पर फ़र्ज़ होती है, और ज़कात कौन कौन सा आदमी ले सकता है, ये हम थोड़ी सी बहस और गुफ्तगू इस पर करेंगे। तो सबसे पहला मैंने कहा कि हमारी गुफ्तगू जानवरों के निसाब पर नहीं होगी, ज़मीन से उगने वाली पैदावार के निसाब पर नहीं होगी, वो अलग है। इसके अलावा जितना मता और माल सामान है उसमें एक उसूली बात ये याद रख लो, वो अगर याद कर लेंगे तो फिर बहुत सारे सवालों का आपको जवाब मिल जाएगा। वो ये हैं कि ज़कात सिर्फ सोना, चांदी और कैश, जिसको समन कहा जाता है, सोना, चांदी और कैश, यानी जो भी डॉलर हमारे पास हो, ये एक, और दूसरा कोई भी माल तिजारत की नीयत से आपके पास हो, किसी किस्म का माल जो हलाल हो, जिसके बिज़नेस करना हलाल हो, वो तिजारत की और बिज़नेस की नीयत से हो तो ज़कात वाजिब होती है। इनके अलावा किसी माल पर ज़कात वाजिब नहीं है। सोना, चांदी और कैश जो हमारे पास है वो एक, इसको समन कहा जाता है, फ़िक़्ह की ज़बान में, टर्म्स में इसको समन कहा जाता है। और दूसरा माल वो जो बिज़नेस की नीयत से हमारे पास हो, बिज़नेस की नीयत से अगर ना हो, हमारे इस्तेमाल के लिए हो, तो उस पर ज़कात नहीं है।
So now that we've determined that wealth is given to some don't have it, it is also the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes from some and gives to the others who are in need. And this is also from the nizam and the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now coming to the point of discussion why we are gathered here to discuss the fiqh of zakat and to understand the rules and the masail of zakat, we need to understand what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala desires from us if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with this wealth, which alhamdulillah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. So there are different categories uh, of zakatable items, right? Shaykh used the term nisab, which is a particular amount, a certain amount that a person has to have in order for zakat to be fard on the individual. So example, if I have only $5, $10, $100, $200, zakat may not be fard on me, I may not have to give it. There's a certain threshold, an amount, right? A line. Once I reach that amount and it exceeds that amount, then zakat will be fard upon me. That is known as nisab. So there's different nisab for animals, for people who are into farming or agriculture. There's nisab for like different things that you have to give for the products that grow for the land, right? So we're not going to into that discussion for obvious reasons. That doesn't really apply to many of us here. So we will stick to what does apply to us, and that is the nisab of gold, silver, and cash. So Shaykh, again, he made it more simple, and he said, bottom line, to understand and put it in simple terms, is that from the assets that you and I may have in this part of the world, zakat is only due upon gold, silver, or cash, which is also in replacement of gold and silver. So gold, silver, cash, that's one category. And if someone has business, then the assets of the business may be zakatable. So these are the only things that zakat is due upon. Anything besides that, anything which is for personal use, a house, a car, clothing, any other personal use items, zakat will not be followed upon that. So again, just to clarify, gold, silver, cash, that's one category, and business. Anything beyond that, zakat will not be necessary.
जहाँ तक सोना चांदी और कैश का ताल्लुक़ है, जो समन कहलाता है एक, उसमें हज़रात हनफिया के नज़दीक चाहे उसकी बिज़नेस करता हो, चाहे वो अपने पर्सनल यूज़ के लिए हो, उस पर ज़कात फ़र्ज़ होती है। अब ये कितनी मिक़दार वो आगे बयान करूँगा, लेकिन हज़रत हनफिया के नज़दीक अगर किसी के पास गोल्ड है, सिल्वर है, कैश है, चाहे उसकी तिजारत बिज़नेस करता हो या अपनी पर्सनल यूज़ के लिए ज्वेलरी बना कर रखी हो, कुछ भी हो, उस पर जो उसकी शराइत पाए जाएंगे तो ज़कात उस पर फ़र्ज़ होती है। इसके अलावा जितना माल है, मैंने कहा कि उसमें किसी पे ज़कात नहीं है, ये अल्लाह ताला का फ़ज़्ल करम एहसान है, उस पर किसी पर ज़कात नहीं है, इल्ला ये कि उसको बिज़नेस की नीयत से लिया, उसका बिज़नेस करता हो। लेकिन सोना चांदी और कैश इसकी फितरत में ही बिज़नेस करना है, वो जमा करके लॉक करके रखने की जगह नहीं है। उसको तो सोने को अरबी में कहते हैं ज़हब। ज़हब का माना है आना जाना, ज़हब है जाना। आप अगर सोने को 1 साल तक अपने कबर्ड में लॉक करके रखे रहेंगे तो उसमें कोई इजाफा नहीं होगा, उसमें कोई बढ़ोतरी नहीं होगी। और ज़कात का अरबी में माना भी होता है बढ़ोतरी, पाक होना, बरकत होना। अब अगर आप इसको रखे रहेंगे तो ये किस काम कहेंगे? आज अगर आपने $20,000 एक कोने में रख दिया या अपने बैंक के अकाउंट में रख दिया और 1 साल के बाद आप जाएंगे तो आपको 20 से ज़्यादा नहीं मिलेंगे, 20 ही मिलेंगे। इंटरेस्ट अलग है, इंटरेस्ट हराम है। लेकिन आप अपने घर में रख लिया, आपने सोना 50 तोला रख दिया अपने घर में, 1 साल के बाद वो 50 का 52 होने वाला नहीं है। तो ये तो आदमी के पास ज़ख़ीरा रखने की चीज़ नहीं है। अल्लाह ने इन चीज़ों को पैदा ही इसलिए किए हैं कि इस पर पूरी कायनात चलती है। सोना चांदी और कैश पर पूरी दुनिया चलती है। अगर मानो कि दुनिया के सब आदमी मिलकर सोना चांदी को ज़ख़ीरा करने लग जाए तो कैसे दुनिया चलेगी? नहीं चलेगी। पूरी दुनिया समन पर चलती है, इसी पर चलती है। इसलिए अल्लाह ताला ने इसमें बिज़नेस की नीयत को शर्त नहीं कहा है कि इसमें चाहे बिज़नेस की नीयत हो या ना हो, आदमी जब इसका मालिक हो गया और उसके कब्ज़े में है तो उस पर ज़कात फ़र्ज हो जाएगी। और इसके अलावा जितने भी है वो तिजारत की नीयत होनी चाहिए। अब ये किसी के पास हो तो अब कितना निसाब हो, कितनी मिक़दार तक हो तो उस पर ज़कात फ़र्ज होती है। इसमें भी अल्लाह ताला की हिकमत देखिए कि फ़कत सोना हो, दूसरी कोई चीज़ ना हो, तो 7.5 तोला, 7.5 तोला का आजकल के ग्राम के एतबार से जो है वो कितने होते हैं? हाँ, 87 ग्राम और 479 मिलीग्राम, ये 7.5 तोला गोल्ड का होता है। 87 ग्राम एंड 479 मिलीग्राम। इसी तरह 52.5 तोला सिल्वर चांदी, जिसके ग्राम होता है 612 मिलीग्राम। ये अगर किसी के पास हो और 1 साल गुजर जाए, अल्लाह ताला ने 1 साल का वक्त दिया कि मैंने इतना तुम्हें दिया है, 1 साल का वक्त तुम्हें दिया है, तुम्हारे पास सेहत, आफ़ियत, ताकत, तंदुरुस्ती है, आप ख़ुद कर सकते हैं। अगर ख़ुद नहीं कर सकते, ख़ुद कुछ बीमार है, तो आप किसी के ज़रिए भी इसका बिज़नेस करवा सकते हैं, इन्वेस्ट करवा सकते हैं। मतलब ये है कि ये चीज़ें रखने की नहीं है, ये चीज़ें इन्वेस्ट करने की है, इसमें इजाफ़ा और बढ़ोतरी करना है। बढ़ोतरी होगी तो आप भी इस्तेमाल करोगे और अल्लाह के दूसरे बंदों के भी ये काम आएगा। इससे ये निसाब है। लेकिन इसका मतलब ये नहीं समझना चाहिए कि अगर किसी के पास 7.5 तोला से कम सोना है तो उस पर ज़कात नहीं है। सिर्फ सिर्फ सोना है तब तो अलग है, लेकिन सोना भी है, चांदी भी है, कैश भी है, तीनों चीज़ है। तो अब तीनों का टोटल लगाओ, तीनों का टोटल लगाकर अगर इसका इतना वैल्यू हो जाता है जितने में 612 ग्राम सिल्वर ख़रीदी जा सकती हो, तो ये निसाब हो गया। ज़कात के फ़र्ज़ होने के लिए निसाब हो गया। ये तो निसाब हुआ, लेकिन फ़ौरन ज़कात वाजिब नहीं होती। 1 साल उस पर गुज़रे और वो भी साल के एंड में आपकी जो हाजत असलिया है, आपकी जो ज़िंदगी की ज़रूरियात है, उससे ज़्यादा सेविंग हुआ हो आपके पास इतना। अल्लाह ने हर एक पर नहीं कहा, बल्कि सेविंग इतना हो। साल गुजर गया और आपने देखा कि मेरे पास इतना अमाउंट सेविंग है, कुछ सोना है, कुछ चांदी है या कुछ कैश है, और तीनों को मिलाकर इतना अमाउंट, इतना वैल्यू हो जाता है जिससे 52.5 तोला सिल्वर ख़रीदी जा सकती है, और ये आपकी ज़रूरत से ज़ायद है। साल गुज़र गया, आपकी ज़रूरत नहीं है, अब ये आपका सेविंग हुआ, तो अब सेविंग के ऊपर फ़कत 2.5% ज़कात है। $100 अगर किसी के पास ज़ायद है तो 100 पर $2.50 ओनली। जी।
So again, emphasizing that gold and silver, whether it's used for business or not, is zakatable. Meaning, if somebody has gold and silver, and they think to themselves that, I'm not doing business with it, I'm not buying and selling, it's just being stored at home, or it's used as jewelry, so perhaps zakat will not be necessary upon that. That is not the case. Whether you are doing something with it or not, whether you're actively trading, trying to increase the value or not, or you just keep it as jewelry, or you just keep it, anticipating the price to rise, right? Then whether you're buying, selling or not, zakat is due upon gold and silver according to Hanafiya. Um, the meaning of gold and the meaning of zakat, namely the words that are used in Arabic, right? They imply this as well, and they give this hidden message as well. There's something that comes and goes. It's something that is meant to be increased. It's something that a person is supposed to invest in and supposed to work on. So now we come to the question, and we come to the point that what is the amount that a person has to have in order for zakat to be fard? So there's the nisab of gold is different, the nisab of silver is different. Now, we need to keep in mind that this nisab is used, yani the nisab of gold is used only if a person has only gold. They don't have any silver, they don't have any cash, then you will use the nisab of gold. If someone doesn't have gold and they have only silver, then you will use the nisab of silver. And they don't have any cash either, only silver. Then you will use the nisab of silver. If somebody has a mix, a collection of gold, silver, and cash, then you won't use gold, you won't use silver. Rather, what you will do is you will take whatever is less of the two, which nowadays is silver. So you will take the value of silver. So coming back to the point, if somebody has only gold, no silver, no cash, then zakat will be fard if a person has approximately 87.48 grams of gold in their possession for 1 year. Then zakat will be fard upon this gold that they have. If a person has only silver, then the amount is 612.36 grams of silver. Then zakat will be fard if this remains in this individual's possession for a year. Generally speaking, for us nowadays, we have some may have gold, some may have silver, and of course we have cash as well. So we won't take the nisab of gold, and we won't necessarily take the nisab of silver to save. Rather, we will take whichever is less of the two, which nowadays, like we established right now, is silver. So we will take the value of gold even if we don't have 87.48, even if we have 10 grams of gold, right? Even if we have 100 grams of silver, which is less than the nisab of gold and silver individually, right? It's less than the two. But we have cash as well. So we will take the value of the gold, of the silver, of the cash, combine all of it, and if it is equivalent to the nisab of silver or more, and it has been in our possession for a year, which means that it's exceeding our necessities, right? We have accumulated, we have kept it, we have, our balance has increased, which means that it's beyond our need. So it's in excess of our need. Now zakat will be fard upon this wealth that we have after a year of it sitting with us, after we became owner of the nisab, and a year has passed by. Now zakat will be fard.
اچھا زکوٰۃ کس پر فرض ہوتی ہے؟
Sorry, I'd just like to add in between that there are some brothers who are, or sisters, families that are watching online as well, and they are sending questions in. Inshallah, we will, when the time comes, inshallah, we will try to address as many of them as possible. I am trying to keep an eye on that as well.
زکوٰۃ فرض کس پر ہوتی ہے؟ تو مسلمان عاقل بالغ مسلمان ہونا چاہیے، نن مسلم زکوٰۃ کے پابند نہیں ہے۔ یہ تو سب کو معلوم ہے کہ وہ زکوٰۃ نہیں دے سکتا، لیکن اگر کوئی نن مسلم اسلام لے آیا اور وہ مسلمان ہو گیا، تب اس کو یہ نہیں کہا جائے گا کہ جتنے سال تیرے نن مسلم ہونے کے حالت میں گزرے ہیں ان سب کی زکوٰۃ دو، نہیں، اس لیے کہ اس وقت وہ مکلف نہیں تھا، اس وقت اس پر زکوٰۃ فرض نہیں تھی۔ تو ایک تو یہ ہے کہ مسلمان ہونا چاہیے، نمبر دو عاقل ہونا چاہیے۔ عاقل کا مطلب وہ بیچارہ پاگل نہ ہو، جو ذہنی اعتبار سے برابر نہ ہو، پاگل ہو، مجنون ہو، اس پر نہیں ہے۔ اور نمبر تین بالغ یا بالغہ، مرد اور عورت دونوں پر فرض ہے زکوٰۃ۔ اسلام میں مرد اور عورت دونوں کی ایسٹ الگ الگ شمار کی گئی ہے، اس کو الگ الگ حیثیت دی گئی ہے، یعنی کہ مرد کے ہی پر زکوٰۃ فرض ہے، نہیں، جیسے نماز فرض ہے عورتوں پر بھی، ویسے زکوٰۃ بھی عورتوں کی اپنی جتنی پراپرٹی ہے اس پر فرض ہے، وہ بھی اس کی ملکیت کو بھی اسلام نے تسلیم کیا ہے۔ للرجال نصیب مما اکتسبوا وللنساء نصیب مما اکتسبن، جو مرد کماتے ہیں وہ مرد کا ہے، جو عورت کماتی ہے وہ عورتوں کا ہے۔ لہٰذا زکوٰۃ کا نبی جیسے نماز میں، روزے میں فرض ہے، تو مالی عبادت بھی عورت کی الگ ہوتی ہے، لیڈیز کی، وہ اگر ان کے پاس ہے تو اس پر بھی زکوٰۃ فرض ہوتی ہے۔ تو عاقل ہونا چاہیے، بالغ ہونا چاہیے اور مسلمان ہونا چاہیے، یہ تین۔ اب آدمی جب نصاب کا مالک ہوا، مثلا آج مالک ہوا، آج روزہ کون سا؟ 11واں روزہ ہے، 11th، آج وہ مالک ہوا 11ویں روزے کے، ٹھیک ہے۔ اب نصاب کا مالک تو ہو گیا، لیکن ڈیورنگ دا ایئر پورے سال اس کی اپنی ضرورت کے اعتبار سے اس میں کمی بیشی ہوتا رہا، کم زیادہ کچھ بھی ہوتا رہا۔ اینڈ آف ایئر، سال کے آخر میں اس کا سیونگ اگر اتنا ہے جتنا کہ نصاب بتایا گیا ہے، تو پھر اس پر ایک سال کے گزرنے کے بعد، یہ سال گزر گیا، اب اس پر جو ہے 2.5% جتنا بھی سیونگ ہے اس پر 2.5% زکوٰۃ فرض ہوگی، اور یہ اس وقت ادا کرنا، یعنی سال کے گزرنے کے بعد ادا کرنا ضروری ہے۔ لیکن مسئلہ یہ ہے کہ اگر کوئی ڈیورنگ دا ایئر سال کے درمیان میں بھی زکوٰۃ کی نیت سے کچھ رقم نکالتا رہے اور حساب لیتا رہے کہ میں یہ زکوٰۃ میں ادا کرتا ہوں، اور سال کے آخر میں اپنا حساب لگایا کہ میرے اوپر مثلا $500 زکوٰۃ کا ہے، اس میں نے $200 تو ڈیورنگ دا ایئر زکوٰۃ دے دی ہے، تو وہ 200 تو کم ہو گیا، اب 300 دے دے۔ وقت سے پہلے بھی زکوٰۃ ادا کر سکتے، یعنی وقت سے پہلے کا مطلب سال گزرنے کے پہلے بھی زکوٰۃ ادا کی جا سکتی ہے۔ تو یہ ہونا چاہیے کہ عاقل ہو، مسلمان ہو، بالغ ہو، اور اتنی نصاب کا مالک جب سے ہوا وہاں سے لے کر سال کے آخر تک اس کے سیونگ میں ہو، ضروریات سے زائد ہو، تو اس پر فقط 2.5% ہے۔ اور جیسے میں نے کہا کہ ملکیت اسلام نے دونوں کی الگ الگ مانی ہے، عورتوں کو بھی الگ، مردوں کو بھی الگ۔ بہت سے لوگ سوال پوچھتے ہیں کہ میری وائف کے پاس اتنی جولری ہے تو میں اس کی زکوٰۃ کتنی دوں؟ پہلے تو یہ طے کرو کہ یہ جولری آپ مالک ہے یا آپ کی وائف مالک ہے۔ اگر مالک آپ ہے تو زکوٰۃ آپ پر فرض ہوگی، اور اگر آپ نے مالک اس کو بنا دیا ہے تو زکوٰۃ اس پر فرض ہوگی۔ इसी तरह बहुत से लोग एक सवाल करते हैं, वो आ भी जाएगा साहब कि भाई वो चाइल्ड बेनिफिट जो आता है, तो चाइल्ड बेनिफिट जो है हमने एक तरफ रखा है और इतने जमा हुए हैं, तो इसकी ज़कात कौन अदा करे, इसकी ज़कात फ़र्ज है कि नहीं। जब तक, अगर इसमें भी दो हैसियत देखो ये चाइल्ड बेनिफिट की जो रकम गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से मिलती है, वो माँ बाप को मिलती है कि इस पर खर्च करे, बच्चों पर खर्च करे, लिहाजा वो माँ बाप की इनकम में शुमार होती है। लेकिन अगर कोई माँ बाप ये कहे कि नहीं, ये बच्चों का आता है और इसको हम बच्चों का अलग से रखें, इसको हम यूज़ न करें, तो अगर आपने ये नीयत कर ली है कि ये मेरे बेटे की या बेटी की, ये मेरा नहीं है, इसमें मेरा कोई हक नहीं है, ये उसी का है, वो ही ओनर है, तो जब तक वो बालिग या बालिगा लड़की नहीं होगी वहां तक उस पर ज़कात नहीं होगी, और वो ओनरशिप उसी की कहलाएगी, उस पर ज़कात नहीं होगी, आप उसको ले भी नहीं सकते। हाँ, अगर आपको यूज़ करना है, कभी कल परसों किसी ने पूछा कि अब हमें तो उसी को दे दिए हैं, वो उसी के है, वही मालिक है, तो अब को हमको अगर कभी इस्तेमाल करना है तो हम कर सकते हैं या नहीं। एज ए कर्ज आप ले सकते हैं कि मैंने अपने बच्चे के माल में से इतना कर्ज लिया है, तो आप कर्ज ले सकते हैं, अगर ज़रूरत पड़े इस्तेमाल की तो कर्ज ले सकते हैं, क्योंकि आपने पहले से उसी को मालिक बना दिया है। ज़कात जब तक वो बालिग और बालिगा नहीं होगी उस पर फ़र्ज नहीं होगी, जब वो बालिग या बालिगा हो जाएगी उसके बाद उस पर ज़कात फ़र्ज होती रहेगी। अब गवर्नमेंट में तो 18 ईयर्स तक मेरे ख्याल से देते हैं, 18 साल तक देते हैं ना, और बच्चे बालिग हो जाते हैं 13, 14, 15 साल में, तो उसके बाद उस पर ज़कात फ़र्ज हो जाती है, इससे कि वो मालिक है, इसके ये सारा जमा हुआ उसका है, अब के बाद उसकी ज़कात होगी जी।
So now the question is that who is zakat fard upon? Who is obligated to discharge this charity? So the answer is, and again, before we get to that, if we understand these usul and these principles, these basic guidelines, rules, right, then the masail of zakat will become very easy to understand. So first and foremost, a person has to be Muslim in order for them to give zakat. That's pretty obvious, right? But the implication could be, or a scenario could appear that an individual accepts Islam, they revert when they're 20, 25, 30 years old. Now it will not be said to this individual after they revert or come back to Islam that you will have to give zakat for the years where you weren't a Muslim. Why? Because this individual was not mukallaf, this individual was not accountable, it was not even fard upon this individual. So they have to be Muslim. Number two, the individual has to be sane, with a sane mind. So if someone is insane, someone is mad, someone is mentally sick, disabled, then zakat is not fard upon that individual. And number three, the person has to be mature, Islamically mature, not legally mature, not legally adult, Islamically. If a person is mature, then zakat will be fard upon this individual. So example now again, getting more practical. If someone becomes the owner of nisab today, which is the 11th of Ramadan, right? Then the 1 year will start from today, and the following year Ramadan on the 11th, if this individual still has the amount of nisab or more, then zakat will be fard. According to Hanafiya, and the fiqh that we follow, within the year, the fluctuation of your wealth is not taken into consideration. So someone becomes the owner of nisab today. 2 months from now, their wealth decreases and it goes below the level of nisab. But they're not bankrupt. It just goes below the nisab. And then a month later, it increases again and decreases and increases, And at the end of the year, which is next year Ramadan, 11th Ramadan, if they still have nisab or more, zakat will be fard. So it's not that every time you become owner of nisab, then it has to remain above that. If it fluctuates within the year, that's not taken into consideration. The end of the year will be taken into consideration. The only exception is if within the year a person goes absolutely bankrupt and they have nothing left. Then that year is no longer taken into consideration, it won't count. Now when this individual becomes owner of nisab once again, whenever it is, that 1 year will start from then, right? So you will restart the year. So a person becomes owner of nisab today, and 1 year from now they still have it. Now, after this year is completed, 2.5% of this total assets that a person has will be fard to discharge in zakat. Another masala and another ruling is that a person can give zakat in advance as well. So the example we just took, 11th of Ramadan, zakat technically would become fard next year, 11th of Ramadan. But let's say in between, somebody came with a request for help, or the family member who needs assistance, and they are eligible for zakat, and you feel that you can assist them, then you can give zakat in advance as well before the year completes. You can keep a track of it, keep a note of it, and then when the year ends, you calculate how much zakat you actually had to give, based on whatever you have on that day, and then you can deduct what you've already given, and give the remainder. And if you've already given more than that, alhamdulillah, that'll, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept that, right? And that'll be considered extra. That's very good. But if you haven't given the amount that you're supposed to, you will deduct that, and whatever is remainder, you give that, inshallah. Another masala, another point to keep in mind, and to, very important to differentiate, is the ownership of the wealth, of the property. So Shaykh, he gave an example that some people ask questions, that my wife has this jewelry, how much zakat should I give on it? The other day I was speaking to someone, and they were saying that their father-in-law or someone had passed away, and the mother-in-law's name was on the account. So, it's their money, like who gets the money, her name is on the account. Name being on the account means nothing, right? If I have an account, my brother's name is on it, my wife's name is on it, my father's name is on it, that doesn't mean they own it. That's just their name is there, in, just for technical reasons to make transactions or whatever the case may be. But I'm the owner. If my father has an account, my name is on the account with him, right? It's not, right? But if it was, then, I don't own it. He owns it, right? It's his money, not mine. So he will have to give zakat. My name being there means nothing, right? So we have to determine the ownership of the wealth, and whoever owns it, that individual will give zakat. So if the wife owns money, right, then the wife will give zakat. If the husband owns money, the husband will give zakat, and they will give separately. Um, that being said, now Shaykh also brought in the masla in between of the children's money. Now that we've come to the discussion of ownership, right? If there is money that belongs to children, it doesn't belong to you, it doesn't belong to your wife, it belongs to the children, then the children and it's considered their ownership. It's not yours. You don't give zakat on that. So a common question is, we have the question regarding child benefits that the government gives, right? So now your intention will be taken into consideration. If the money is coming to you and the parents are taking this money and they're utilizing the money for the expenses, the monthly expenses, then that means that they own the money. Whatever remains of that, whatever is accumulated in the account, they will give zakat on it. It belongs to them. But if a parent thinks to himself or herself, right, that we have enough to, go by, our monthly expenses are being taken care of, alhamdulillah. So whatever money the government is giving, I will keep it to a side, and they make it, not just keep it to a side, but they make intention that it belongs to the children now, right? It belongs to them. They are the owners. Now zakat will not be fard upon that until those children become mature. When they become mature, now they will start giving zakat. Why? Because they are owners. Now, if there is a need for the parent to use that money, if there comes a time where they need money and they need to use this money, they've already made intention that it doesn't belong to them, it belongs to the children. They can't just use that money on their free will. It doesn't belong to them. What they can do is they can take it as a loan. It's their property, it's children's property. You can use it, but it's a loan now. You have to pay them back because it belongs to them. So ownership is very important. If something belongs to the children, then zakat will not be fard upon it so long as they are not mature. Once they become mature, then zakat will be fard a year after that. Similarly, the wealth of a husband and wife should be differentiated. If they are keeping separate accounts, right? Then zakat should be calculated separately.
निसाब के मालिक होने में इस बात का लिहाज शरीयत ने किया है, जिससे हमारे बहुत से मसाइल हल हो जाते हैं। जैसे हम जॉब पर जाते हैं तो लोग पूछते हैं कि भाई कंपनी में से हमारा इतना तनख्वाह में से ले लेते हैं और कंपनी इतनी देती है, तो बाज़ कंपनी में इख्तियारी होती है कि आप अगर चाहे तो इतने % आपकी तनख्वाह में से ले, और कंपनी उसके अंदर दूसरा ऐड करती है। या बाज़ ऑप्शनल नहीं होता, बल्कि बाज़ कंपनी में बिल्कुल ये लाजिमी होती है कि आपके तनख्वाह में से, आपकी वेजेस में से इतने % ले लेते हैं और फिर वो आपको उसमें ऐड करते हैं, और जब ख़त्म होती है उस वक्त आपको देंगे। ये मसले भी इससे हल हो जाएंगे। मैं जो एक उसूल बताता हूँ, वो उसूल ये है कि निसाब का आदमी मालिक भी हो और उसका कब्ज़ा भी हो उस पर। कब्ज़ा चाहे हकीकतन हो या हुक्मन हो। ایک تو یہ ہے کہ مالک ہونا چاہے، اونرشپ اس کی ہونی چاہیے، اور اس کے قبضے میں بھی ہونا چاہیے، اور قبضہ چاہے حقیقتاً ہو، حقیقتاً کا مطلب اس کے پاس ہے، اس کے پاس ہے، خود کے پاس ہے، حقیقتاً ہے، یا حکمن ہو، حکمن کا مطلب یہ ہے کہ ان کے پاس تو نہیں ہے، مثلا بینک میں رکھ دیے ہیں، ایسے تو ہے بہت سارے، لیکن بینک میں ہے، تو کوئی یہ کہے کہ میرے قبضے میں نہیں ہے، تو آپ کا قبضہ آپ نے خود اپنے اختیار سے وہاں رکھا ہے، تو یہ حکمن آپ کا ہی کہلایا، کیونکہ آپ کے اختیار سے آپ نے رکھا ہے، اور آپ جب چاہے اس میں سے نکال سکتے ہیں۔ اب چاہے کہے کہ میں نے تو فلاں اکاؤنٹ میں رکھا ہے اور اس اکاؤنٹ میں میں نہیں نکال سکتا، تو یہ بھی آپ نے خود کیا ہے، تو آپ کی خود کے کرنے سے اگر آپ نے اپنا قبضہ ختم کیا ہے تو یہ حکمن قبضہ مانا ہی جائے گا کہ یہ آپ کا قبضہ ہے۔ ویسے جو کمپنی میں اختیار دیا جاتا ہے کہ آپ چاہے تو رکھو اتنے پرسنٹ، ہم اتنے پرسنٹ ایڈ کریں گے، اور آپ کو اختیار ہے اگر نہ رکھنا چاہے تو نہ رکھے، تو وہاں بھی گویا کہ آپ نے اپنے اختیار سے آپ کا قبضہ اس کو دیا ہے، تو پھر زکوٰۃ فرض ہوگی۔ لیکن اگر کسی کمپنی کا یہی قانون ہے کہ نہیں، آپ کے ویجز میں سے اتنا ہم مہینے میں لے ہی لیں گے اور ہم اتنا ایڈ کریں گے، اور آپ کو درمیان میں ملے گا بھی نہیں، اس کا جب وقت آئے گا اس وقت ملے گا، تو یہ آپ کا قبضہ نہ حکمن ہے نہ حقیقتاً ہے، تو اس پر زکوٰۃ نہیں ہوگی۔ جو کمپنی والے وہ دیں گے، یا آپ کا بھی جو لے لیا ہے اس پر زکوٰۃ نہیں ہوگی۔
So a side note that when a person becomes the owner of nisab, then it's not only that you become the owner, but you also should have possession over and access to it. So whether this possession is physically you have it with you, or yani, it's hukman. Hukman in our terms we'll say we have access to it, you have control over it, right? So for example, a person has money in the bank, it's not with you physically, but you have access to it, you have control over it, you can direct it however you want. So that's considered your possession as well. So you mentioned a side ruling, and that is that sometimes we have pension plans or plans from the companies, right? Where a person is working, where a person is contributing for their retirement or whatever the case may be. There are two scenarios that the Shaykh mentioned. One is that one is optional, where it is done with the consent of the employee, right? He or she wishes to do that and they participate in it. This will be considered your ownership because you consent to it, whether it comes to you or not, right? You've consented, you've consent to it, you've agreed to it. So now the money that is not coming directly to you but is going towards a separate account which is for you will be also considered your money. And on the other hand, there may be scenarios where your consent is not needed. You know, your agreement, you don't need to agree to it, but rather it's a policy and it's just taken whether you like it or not, whether you agree or not. Then that may not necessarily be considered your possession, and perhaps in certain scenarios, zakat will not be necessary in these types of schemes or plans.
تو زکوٰۃ نکالنے میں مرد کی الگ حیثیت ہے، عورت کی الگ حیثیت سے۔ ایک مرد، ایک آدمی یہ دیکھے گا کہ میرے پاس کتنا اماؤنٹ ہے، کتنا گولڈ ہے، کتنا سلور ہے، یا صرف سلور ہے یا صرف گولڈ ہے، اس کے اعتبار سے وہ اینڈ آف ایئر دیکھے گا کہ اتنا میرا سیونگ ہوا ہے، یہ میرے پاس ہے، تو اس پر زکوٰۃ فرض ہوگی۔ عورت خود اپنا حساب لگائے گی کہ میرے پاس کتنا ہے، میری پراپرٹی کتنی ہے، کتنی ایسی ہے کہ جس پر زکوٰۃ ہے، تو وہ اینڈ آف ایئر اپنا حساب لگائے گی اور وہ اپنا حساب سے زکوٰۃ ادا کرے گی، وہ مرد پر فرض نہیں ہے۔ ہاں اگر مرد اپنی طرف سے اس کی اجازت ہے کہ ہاں میں آپ کی طرف سے ادا کر دوں، وہ کہے ٹھیک ہے آپ ادا کر دیں، تو ہو سکتا ہے، یہ ہو سکتا ہے، ورنہ الگ الگ دونوں پر اپنی اپنی پراپرٹی کا اپنا اپنا جو ہو اس پر فرض ہوتا ہے۔ تو یہ سونا چاندی اور کیش کا ہو گیا۔ اس کے علاوہ میں نے کہا جتنی بھی چیزیں ہیں ان ساری چیزوں پر زکوٰۃ اس وقت فرض ہوتی ہے جبکہ وہ بزنس کی نیت سے ہو۔ آپ کے پاس 2-3 مکان ہے، آپ بزنس نہیں کرتے گھروں کا، مکان کا، ہاؤسز کا، آپ نے رینٹ پر لگائے ہوئے ہیں، تو ہاؤسز کی ویلیو پر زکوٰۃ نہیں ہے۔ اس سے جو انکم آتی ہے، رینٹ آتا ہے، وہ اگر آپ کے اینڈ آف ایئر جتنا بھی آپ کا حساب لگائیں گے اس میں اس کو ایڈ کریں گے، اور جو بھی سیونگ ہوگا جتنا ٹوٹل کے حساب سے، پورے ٹوٹل کے حساب سے اس پر زکوٰۃ فرض ہوگی۔ اسی طرح کوئی آدمی فیکٹری چلا رہا ہے تو فیکٹری کی جو مشینریاں ہیں اس پر زکوٰۃ نہیں ہے، اس کے ویلیو پر زکوٰۃ نہیں ہے، لیکن اس سے جو پروڈکٹ تیار ہوتا ہے، اس سے جو بزنس کرتے ہیں، بیچتے ہیں، اس پر زکوٰۃ ہے۔ ایک آدمی اسٹور ہے، تو اسٹور پر ایسا بھی ہوتا ہے کہ مال بہت سارا جمع کیا ہوا ہے اس نے بزنس کے لیے۔ اب اس بزنس میں بعض مرتبہ ایسا ہوتا ہے کہ جو ہول سیلر سے، سپلائر سے خریدتے ہیں تو اس کو پیسے دینا ہوتا ہے، تو اینڈ آف ایئر اپنا پورا مال کی ویلیو کریں گے کہ کتنا اسٹاک میں ہے اور کتنا مجھے دینا ہے اور کتنا کسٹمر سے مجھے لینا ہے، اس کا حساب کر کے اب سیونگ کتنا ہوا، پروفٹ کتنا ہوا، اس پر پھر زکوٰۃ فرض ہوگی۔
So determining the ownership is important. Again, coming back to the point that husband and wife will give their own, will determine their own wealth. But a husband can give on behalf of the wife with her permission. It can be given like this, but the ownership is considered different. Um, Mentioning the point of business wealth, that zakat is necessary upon business, and gold and silver, not anything beyond that. So if a person has properties that a person has bought for personal use, not for resale, so they have, meaning they have a primary house where they're living, and then they have a secondary or even a third house that they've bought as an investment for themselves. Investment in the sense that, they have money, so they bought a house. But there's no intention of reselling it at the moment. There's no intention of doing business with it. There's no intention of flipping it. It's just multiple properties that a person has. So zakat will not be necessary upon the value of that property because it's not for business, right? Zakat will be upon the income that is generated from it. That's cash, that's income, that's fine. You will give zakat on that, but not the actual property. Similarly, if a person has business and they have machinery, they have tools that they are using for the business, right? Zakat is not necessary upon the machinery and the tools for the business. Yes, if there is stock, if there's whatever business they're doing, if they're selling clothing, for example, whatever stock they have of clothing, if they're selling furniture, whatever stock they have for the furniture, that will be taken into consideration. You will give zakat on that. But the actual building or property or machinery, right, you will not give zakat on that.
بہت سی مرتبہ ایسا ہوتا ہے کہ انسان پلاٹ خریدتا ہے، لینڈ خریدتا ہے، اور لینڈ کے یا پلاٹ کے خریدنے کے وقت یہ نیت ہوتی ہے کہ میں ابھی لے لیتا ہوں اور جب اس کی قیمتیں بڑھے گی اس وقت اس کو بیچ دوں گا، تو یہ بھی تجارت کہا جائے گا، یہ انویسٹمنٹ کہا جائے گا، اس پر زکوٰۃ فرض ہوگی، اس پر زکوٰۃ فرض ہوگی۔ لیکن ایک شخص نے اس سے لیا کہ میں لینڈ لیتا ہوں یا پلاٹ لیتا ہوں، آئندہ چل کر اس میں اپنا مکانات بناؤں گا جب ضرورت پڑے گی، کوئی بیچنے کی نیت نہیں ہے، اب پھر چاہے 2-3 سال کے بعد اگر بیچ بھی دے تو زکوٰۃ نہیں ہے۔ مطلب یہ ہے کہ خریدتے وقت اس نے انویسٹ کی اور تجارت کی اور بیچنے کی نیت کی ہے، اسی لیے خرید رہا ہے تو اس پر زکوٰۃ ہے، ورنہ نہیں۔
Similarly, if a person buys a property with the intention that they will sell later on when the value increases, maybe not in the near term, right? But whenever the value increases, then they will sell. Then that will be considered a business property. That will be considered zakatable. So the bottom line is the intention that is made at the time of purchasing a property, that will be taken into consideration. If somebody just buys a property, not with the intention of reselling it, but just thinking to themselves, they know I'll keep it. And if Allah Ta'ala, gives me the opportunity, then maybe in the future I'll, build a house on here, for the kids or whatever the case may be. And then zakat is not necessary upon that. But if they have intention of selling, whether it's now or whether it's, years from now, that will be considered zakatable.
اب نمبر 2 پر ہم بحث کرتے ہیں کہ زکوٰۃ کن کو دی جائے، زکوٰۃ کے مستحق کون ہو سکتے ہیں۔ قرآن کریم میں اللہ تعالیٰ نے 8 قسم کے لوگوں کو زکوٰۃ دینے کے لیے فرمایا ہے، انما الصدقات للفقراء والمساکین والعاملین علیہا والمؤلفۃ قلوبہم وفی الرقاب وفی والغارمین وفی سبیل اللہ وابن السبیل، یہ 8 قسم کے لوگ ہیں جس کو زکوٰۃ دینا جائز ہے، جس کو زکوٰۃ دے سکتے ہیں، کہ جو حقیقت میں مستحق ہو، فقیر ہو، محتاج ہو، مسافر ہو جس کے پاس کچھ نہ ہو، اللہ کے راستے میں دین کو بلند کرنے کے لیے کسی ضرورت پڑ جائے تو اس میں دے۔ یہ 8 قسم کے لوگوں کو اللہ نے خود قرآن میں بیان کر دیا ہے، اس کو آپ زکوٰۃ دے سکتے ہیں۔ جس کے پاس خود کے پاس اتنا نہیں ہے کہ وہ اپنا زندگی گزار سکے، محتاج ہو یا وہ مقروض ہے، اس کے اوپر قرض ہیں، تو اس پر زکوٰۃ، اس کو آپ زکوٰۃ دے سکتے ہیں۔ اس میں خیال اتنا رہے کہ خل اپنے اصول اور فروع کو نہیں دے سکتے۔ اصول اور فروع کا کیا مطلب؟ میرے اصول وہ ہیں جن سے میں پیدا ہوا، یعنی میرے باپ، دادا، پردادا جو بھی ہو، یا نانا، نانی، پرنانی جو بھی ہو، یہ میرے اصول کہلاتے ہیں، یہ میری جڑ اصول کہلاتی ہے، ان کو میں نہیں دے سکتا۔ اور میرے فروع کو نہیں دے سکتا۔ فروع کا مطلب یہ ہے کہ جو مجھ سے پیدا ہوئے، میری آل اولاد ہے، بیٹے ہیں، بیٹیاں ہیں، پوتے ہیں، نواسے ہیں، جو بھی ہے آخر تک، اس کو نہیں دے سکتے۔ اگر وہ محتاج ہے، مثلا باپ دادا ہے، میں اس کو زکوٰۃ نہیں دے سکتا، لیکن وہ محتاج ہے، تو آپ پر فرض ہے کہ آپ اپنی خالص کمائی میں سے ان کو ہیلپ کریں، ان کا حق ہے ماں باپ کا کہ آپ دو۔ اسی طرح اولاد ہے، اولاد محتاج ہے، آپ اولاد کو زکوٰۃ نہیں دے سکتے، لیکن آپ اپنے خالص کمائی میں سے انہیں دو، یہ آپ کا فرض ہے، آپ پر اس وقت ان کا نفقہ فرض ہو جاتا ہے۔ ہاں، ان کے کچھ یہ شریعت نے رکھے ہیں، مثلا اولاد ہے، اولاد محتاج ہے، تو آپ اپنے لڑکے کو تو نہیں دے سکتے، لیکن ان کی بیوی کو دے سکتے آپ۔ ان کی بیوی سے آپ کا کوئی تعلق نہیں ہے، نہ اصول میں ہے نہ فروع میں ہے، تو ان کو آپ دے سکتے ہیں، وہ اپنے گھر کا خرچ اس کے چلائے، یہ ہو سکتا ہے۔ لیکن جہاں تک ہو سکے اپنوں کو اصول اور فروع جو بھی ہے اس کو جو ہے خالص رقم ہی دینا چاہیے۔ اسی طرح جو سید ہے، یعنی واقعتاً جس کا رشتہ نبی کریم صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم سے ہاشمی کہلاتے ہیں یا قریشی کہلاتے ہیں، ان سے ملتا ہے، تو ان کو بھی زکوٰۃ نہیں دے سکتے، ان کو بھی خالص مال سے دینا چاہیے، اس سے کہ زکوٰۃ جو ہے مال کا میل کہلاتا ہے۔ حضور نے فرمایا کہ مال کا میل ہے، اور سید جو ہیں وہ اعلیٰ قسم کے کہلاتے ہیں، جس کا حقیقت میں، آج تو سید کہنے والے بہت سارے ہیں، لیکن جو حقیقت میں سید ہے کہ جس کا تعلق سیدھا ادھر سے ملتا ہو، تو ان کو زکوٰۃ نہیں، ان کو خالص رقم دینا چاہیے۔ لیکن علماء نے اس پر یہ لکھا ہے کہ آج کل لوگ خالص رقم دیتے نہیں، اور وہ زکوٰۃ لے نہیں سکتے، ان کے لیے دینا جائز نہیں ہے ان کو، تو بیچارے تکلیف میں رہتے ہیں، محتاج و ضرورت میں رہتے ہیں، تو کوئی حیلہ کر لے۔ حیلہ کا مطلب یہ ہے کہ جو زکوٰۃ کا مستحق ہو، دوسرا کوئی غیر سید، انہیں دے دے اور وہ پھر ان کو ہدیہ دے دے، یہ بھی کر سکتے ہیں۔
So now the next point of discussion is who can zakat be given to? Who are the recipients of zakat? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned that in the ayah of the Quran. There are 8 categories of people. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned each one of them. The poor, those who are in need, the traveler, those who are in debt, a person who is in fi sabilillah. There are multiple categories, right? Uh, there, nowadays, there are some categories which are not applicable. We don't apply them. They are not taken into consideration. And there are some that are. Generally speaking, for us, the category that applies nowadays is probably just people who are in need, poor people, and perhaps people who are in debt. There's a category of people of a person who is a traveler, or wabni sabil, a person who is a traveler. Uh, that used to happen back in the day, where a person would travel back home in their country, or at home. They had assets, they have a lot of money, but wherever they are traveling at the moment, they're out of money, and they don't have anything, and they don't have access to any of the money. Now this person can take zakat, right, to cover their expenses. That's a established ruling. That's fine. Nowadays, like we mentioned, we have the card, we have debit cards, credit cards, just that, pay from the phone. So it's hard to imagine that a person is away from home and they don't have access to their money, right? Which is why we're coming down and breaking it down to perhaps 2 or 3 categories that we are left with, and that is those who are in need, those who are poor, those who don't have the amount of nisab, or those who are in debt, right? These are the categories that we will be assisting. One rule to keep in mind is that when you give zakat, you can give zakat to anybody, as long as that anybody, meaning anybody who is eligible, anybody who zakat can be given to, as long as they are not above you in your family tree or below you in your family tree. So parents, grandparents, great grandparents, children, grandchildren, great grandchildren, you can't give it to them. Anyone besides that, anyone besides who are above you in your family tree or below you in the family tree, if someone besides you, right, or below, siblings or uncles or aunts or nephews, niece, that's fine, you can give them, not above you, not below you. And similarly, there's also a category, which is a category of being a sayyid, which is those who are from the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, those whose family tree lineage reaches up to Nabi alayhi salam, and they actually do, right? Then zakat should not be given to them, cannot be given to them. Rather, we give them pure wealth. And similarly, if a person is if a person's parent, father, mother, or grandparent or children are in need, then it becomes necessary for this individual to assist them with their pure wealth, not zakat, because zakat is considered, wealth that you are taking out to purify the remainder of your wealth. So this is somewhat considered dirty, right? So you don't give this to the family of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rather, you use your pure wealth and you gift them, right? You do sadaqah, meaning nafila, right? Optional sadaqah, and you give them and you assist them by this means. The ulama have written that nowadays, if this becomes difficult, right? Because there are times where people, especially nowadays, you like every man for himself, everyone thinks for themselves. So it becomes difficult for the sayyid, if a person is a sayyid and they are in need of assistance, but they can't take zakat and there's nobody willing to assist them, then what do they do, right? It becomes difficult. So ulama have mentioned a hila. Hila means like a leeway, right? It's not something that you should adopt, right? Just generally, it's not something that we should do, thinking that this is something that is done in Sharia. Rather, this is like like something. A route is not being able to be taken. We can't take that, so we go around it, right? Again, this is only for like emergency situation. It's not something that you do. So in this particular scenario, if there is an individual like that, then ulama have given permission that perhaps you can give this money to someone who is in need, and that person who is in need can then gift it to the sayyid. So, zakat, technically it's not zakat being given to them now. Now it's a gift being given to them. But the money that was given to the poor individual was zakat. Now they became owner of it, right? And now they gave it to the sayyid as a gift. So this way is permissible if there's no other possible scenario. To the brothers who are asking online, again, I'll remind. I guess some of them maybe joined in a little later on. Inshallah, when the time comes, we will review the questions. Some of them are being answered as we're going along, and if they are not, inshallah, we will come back to them.
अब मेरे ख्याल से तफसील तो आ गई कि कौन से माल पर ज़कात है, किस पर नहीं है, और किसको दिया जाता है और कब दिया जाता है, ये सारी तफसील तो सामने आ गई है। अब अगर कोई सवाल है तो कीजिए, क्या आया है सवाल? जी।
Okay, so let's get to the discussion of the RESP. A brother also asked here as well, so we'll discuss that inshallah. The brother asked regarding RESP and giving zakat on that. This is in the scenario that the child is actually it could be even if you're the owner, right? If you're keeping it for the side for the child, right? There is an amount that is contributed from the government, right? They also assist and they also put in. So the question the brother's asking is that that amount that the government gives is not in your possession, or you don't have access to it until the child matures and actually goes to college or university. Until then, you can't have it. Even if you try to withdraw from the RSP, that money is taken back by the government and you only get what you contributed. So the ruling for that is you only give zakat on the contribution that you have made. The addition that the government has put in for you or for the child, right, is not zakatable at the moment. When they do mature meaning when they do end up using that amount, when they do have access to it, when they do end up going to college, university, and they have access to this to the fund, now they will give zakat on the entire amount if that amount is given to them. Up until then, like you said, somebody matures when they're 13, 14, but they're not in college, university yet, right? But they have money sitting in there. They have money from the government that's also there. So they won't give zakat on the entire amount of the RSP portfolio or the plan. Rather, they will give amount on whatever is their contribution or whatever you have contributed for them, which is their ownership, which you have ownership over, which you have access to. You will give zakat on that much only, not the amount that the government has given you, which you don't have access to right now. That you will give zakat on whenever you start, college, university, and if it's still there and if you still have it. So for now, they only give, or you only give on whatever your contribution is, not the entire amount. Yeah. There's another question somebody asked online, that if is zakat given on gold that was given as a gift? Yes, if it's given as a gift, regardless whether you bought it or it's gifted to you, if it's in your possession, you are the owner, then that is considered your property. You will give zakat on that. What if kids are not earning once they become baligh? How can he or she pay zakat on childcare funds? So the question is, again, like the example, the RESP, right? We've made an RESP account for our children on the side, but they're not earning, they don't have an income, right? How will they give zakat? Um, they can give zakat. Well, the parents can give zakat on their behalf, right? Whatever amount there is, the parents can give it on their behalf. Or if the children have whatever, if they have some money on the side, uh, well, this is always talking about children, children meaning mature children, right? So when we say children, I'm using the word children legally. Islamically, they are considered adult now, right? Islamically, they're not children anymore; they're adults. So, but legally, they're still considered children. So if they're not earning, but they have some money, right? They will give zakat from that money. And if they don't have any money, let's say they have gold or silver, right? Somebody, like they have jewelry, and there's no other way of giving it, then they can sell that gold gold and silver, sell it, or they can give that as well, the gold and silver, if it's equivalent to the amount that they have to give zakat, that they can give that. And if there's no other way, like I said, then the parents can give on their behalf as well. Another question is that we mentioned right now in between that if the wealth fluctuates during the year, right, then that will not be taken into consideration. Rather, the end of the year will be taken. So the question is, what um, what state will be taken into consideration? Is it the highest amount, the lowest, latest, or the oldest? That's the question. So the answer to that is that when the year ends, whatever you have at the time the year ends, in other words, the latest, the most recent amount that you have, not the highest, not the lowest. When your year completes, whatever you have at that time, that's the amount that will be taken into consideration. Zakat will be fard upon that. Yes. I will come to that, inshallah. Just give me a minute. I will come to that. Let me just, some of the brothers, it seems they're in a rush, right? So the question is, if I have an apartment that I own and I have rentals, do I take zakat out for the value of the apartment or zakat on the rental? That was discussed in the discussion, that if a person has multiple properties, but they are not for intention of selling, meaning it's not for business, then you don't give zakat on the entire value of the property. Rather, you give it on the income of the rental if you still have it, right? Whatever income you've generated, if you've spent it, you don't have it anymore. But if you still have it at the end of the year, you will include that into your assets and you will give on the rental, not the entire value of the property. If you sell the apartment in the future, do you take zakat out for the previous years? No, you don't. That is, again, that is if you didn't have intention of selling, right? If you have intention of selling, then that's considered a business property, right, that you are actively trying to deal, right? Whether it's now, you're waiting for the right price, a year from now, 2 years from now, then you will give on the entire amount, otherwise no. Do I give zakat on OSAP or RESP? RESP we just discussed. OSAP, again, if it is money that you own, right, that is given to you, then you will give zakat on it. So there's another point. It's a good thing this thing came up. I guess we'll add it in there, right? And that is that sometimes a person has a amount that they have to pay, like a mortgage, right? If a person financed a car, right, they have a certain amount that they have to pay for the coming year. So the principle is, um, if if a person doesn't need to deduct that, then that's even better. You don't deduct that at all, right? But let's say a person has a certain amount, right? $100,000 example, but in the coming year, and they also have a mortgage, they're paying off their house, right? Now, do you, do you give zakat on the 100,000 that you have, or do you take into consideration the mortgage you have and the debt that you have, and what do you do, right? So if a person were to just consider the debt or the mortgage all the time, right, then perhaps many people will not give zakat. So they have 100,000, but they're still paying off their house, which is a million, right? 500,000 balance left. So if you balance the two, the person actually is in 400,000 debt, right? If you consider two, then this person will never give zakat or until the house is paid off, right? So ulama have given permission that you can take the amount that is due for the following year, 1 year. You calculate that much and you can reduce that much from your assets and then give for the remainder. So you don't take your entire mortgage, rather take whatever you have for the coming year. Similarly, if a person financed a car, then that is, possible as well. You can do that as well. And if a person doesn't need to do that, that's even better, right? If you don't need to deduct that and the person thinks to himself that, no, alhamdulillah, my monthly expenses are going and I still have this, so I'll just give zakat on the entire amount, that is absolutely even better, right? But if someone wants to do that and they need to do that, then they can do that for the year. So I guess for OSAP, you can probably consider that as well. If there's an amount that you owe the government, right? If it's not immediate, right? Technically, if you're in debt, you're in debt. Technically, if you're in debt, like for a student, if you're in debt, you're in debt. You wouldn't have to give zakat, right? If you owe the government back. But if there's still some time, right? Because like the understanding is, like we take OSAP and we say, okay, I have to owe the government. But at the same time, we have a $1,000 phone, right? At the same time, we're going out and eating with our friends every weekend, right? And our monthly phone bill is like $80, right? $70 with the internet and everything. So they're expensive. We're constantly buying expensive clothing. We're doing everything perfectly fine, throughout our life. But when it comes time to give zakat, then you say, "Oh, I have a loan that I have to pay the government." Right? So this is something that you and I, we need to check ourselves. We're answerable to Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. That's why I'm saying that if a person really needs to do that, then okay, you are considered in debt. You can deduct that. But if you don't need to, and you don't need to immediately pay, your finances are perfectly fine. You're going about. Then there's no need for you to deduct this amount from your assets. Rather, you give it, right? The per if you can if a person can afford a smartphone, which is over $1,000 nowadays, zakat is 2.5%, right? So for $1,000, how much are you giving? 2.5% is $25, right? Everybody can afford that, alhamdulillah. Everyone can afford that. I'm sure that there's nobody here who would disagree with that. But so coming back to the point, if there is a debt, you can deduct it, and if it's an ongoing, payment that you are making, then you can take the amount of the following year and take that and deduct that. If I borrow money from someone, do I give zakat, or the person who lent me the money has to give zakat? If you've given money to someone, then you will give zakat on that. That is your money. They will pay you back. That is your money. You will consider it your property. You will give zakat on that. They don't need to give zakat. They are in debt, right? They are in debt. That's a loan. So you've given zakat to someone, you will pay. Um, so the question is, gold, silver, and cash zakat is fardhan. What about the extra stuff, kitchen stuff such as dinner sets in our house? So personal use property, zakat is not necessary upon personal use stuff. If a person has only cash and gold, does he take this nisab of silver while calculating zakat? Yes. So if the person does not have silver, but they have gold and they have cash, you will still take the amount of silver. You will still take the lesser of the two, right? Because you still have something besides gold. Cash is in representation of gold and silver both. So whether if a person has gold physically and they have some cash, cash can be represented by silver as well, right? So you will take the nisab of silver if you have cash and you have gold. If a person has only gold, no cash, then you will take the nisab of gold. Okay. So I have to check that. I'll check it. Um, you look at the price of silver, right, today. Just give me a second. 77 cents US. Now, hold on a second. Yeah, just a second. So yeah, so the value of 1 gram of silver today is approximately $1.04. $1.04. And the nisab of silver is 612 grams, 613 grams. So approximately $620, $25, right? That's the nisab of silver, which, like I said, pretty much everyone has. So nisab of silver today is approximately $625, $630, around that much. Um, Another question, let me just get to it before we have open up here.
आपका क्या क्वेश्चन था? ज़कात है, बेचो उसको, बेचो या उसी में से कुछ ग्राम वज़न के एतबार से भी निकाल सकते हैं कि वो सोना ही दे दे ज़कात में जितना होता है वो भी कर सकते हैं। देखिए, हमको जहाँ तक हम मुकल्लफ हैं, हम इनकी तहकीक कर ले जितनी हमारे बस में हो कि भाई ये वो मुस्तहिक है या नहीं है। अब अगर वो झूठ बोलते हो कि मेरे पास कुछ नहीं है और वो ले ले, तो उनको अल्लाह के यहाँ जवाब देना है। हम तो मुस्तहिक समझ कर उसको देते हैं, लेकिन अगर किसी के पास सोना है और दूसरी कोई इनकम नहीं है, सोना है, तो भी वो मुस्तहिक नहीं है, इसलिए कि उसके पास सोना है इतना। आपको अगर मालूम है कि ज्वेलरी पड़ी हुई है, ये है, तो उनको चाहिए कि वो बेचे या उसको इन्वेस्ट करे अपना। नहीं, तीसरा बंदा कहे उसका कोई एतबार नहीं। वो खुद जब कह रहे हैं, अल्लाह का खौफ है उसे, वो खुद कह रहे हैं। जी।
So there's a question here regarding giving for kids who are living with grandparents. Parents are divorced, mom has passed away, father isn't responsible. There's a scenario that's mentioned here. Pretty much the answer is that you should not give to the grandparents unless they are eligible for zakat as well. For the kids, their expenses being taken care of by the grandparents. That's their responsibility. They are taking care of it. If the grandparents themselves are eligible for zakat, then you can give them. Otherwise, you should try giving them your pure wealth. Uh, Aunt wants to go for Umrah. If you send money as Sadaqah Jariyah, would that count as Sadaqah Jariyah? Yes, that's a form of Sadaqah. You can do that, but not Zakat. You can't give Zakat for that. Person works 9 to 5, pays a mortgage, but has debt owed to a family member. Could the debt amount be deducted from total assets? Yes, like I mentioned just now about the debt, right? If you have a debt, you can deduct that from total assets, especially if that debt is, like you have to pay it now. If it's not a debt that you have time, which you are paying in installments, monthly, like a mortgage, if it's an amount that you owe lump sum, especially, soon, or it's open whenever you have the amount, then you are obliged to pay, right? Then you can deduct the entire debt from the assets, yes. So this, I guess, covers up. Oh yes, we had the question of TFSA, right? So let me come back to the question of TFSA. So with TFSA, first and foremost, the investing in companies and which companies are permissible and not, we're not getting to that discussion, right? That's every person will have to do their own research for that. There are two things when it comes to trading in the market or investing in the market, right? If someone is actively trading, Someone is actively trading, meaning their intention is not to invest in the company, rather it's just to buy the stock, and when the stock price increases, then they will sell, right? So it's not that, I'm buying a stock for this company and I want to invest in this company, and I'm going to, I want dividends and I want my, value to increase. It's not investment, rather, well, it's an investment, but more just to flip, just to buy and sell, anticipating the price to rise. Then this will be considered a business stock, business wealth, and you will give zakat on the entire amount. Entire amount. If someone is actively trading, again. If someone is not actively trading, like the example the brother was giving, right? Rather, they are invested in a company. Now, you don't give zakat on the entire value of the stock that you have. What that means is you've taken ownership, is a certain percentage ownership of the company, right? It may be very little, whatever it is, right? But you've taken ownership of a certain a percentage of that company because you are invested in it. So you have a partnership. Now, when you have a partnership in a business, you don't give zakat on everything in the business, right? Like as we discussed, the material, the machinery, we don't give zakat on everything. The stock you give on, right? But the buildings and so now what you will do is you will determine what the zakatable assets are of the company, right? As you mentioned that there are some things that you give zakat on, some things you don't give zakat on. So you will have to try to determine what the zakatable assets are. Last year we were discussing, I was reading upon this last year, right? And some of the, Mufti and Kiram, alhamdulillah, did some research on this, right? And it is not easy for every individual, for you and I, to access the filings of every company to find out what the zakatable assets are and what are not. It's difficult to determine for every company, and for you to get access to that as well. So some ulama, alhamdulillah, did do some research on that, right? And they came to the conclusion that if a person were to give, or on average, right, the zakatable assets of a company are approximately 20 to 25% of the value, right? That would be considered the zakatable asset. So I always say, my personal, if a person gives 25%, if you know the exact amount, you can give the exact amount, of course. If you know the exact amount of the zakatable assets of the company, you can give that much and that's fine. If you don't know, then I would suggest, right, that you give 30% of the value, right, and consider that 30% to be the zakatable asset of the company in which you are invested in, and you give zakat on 30%, rather than giving zakat on the entire portfolio, right, of the companies. And again, that's if you're not actively trading. If you're actively trading, then that will be considered like a business, stock, business property, right? And you will give zakat on the entire amount, not only the zakatable asset. I hope that inshallah answers the question. 30. It's a little more than 20, right? But so to be on the safe side, I would suggest 30, right? If you know the exact amount, if it's less than 20, you can give whatever exact. If it's 10%, if it's 15%, you can give that too, right? If you know the exact amount. But if you don't, right? Like I said, on average, it's between 20 to 25%, right? But just to be on the safe side, I would suggest that you increase it 5% more and give 30%. Yes, of the company, yes. So of the value of the stock. Yes. Yes. No. 30% you give zakat on. So 30,000 you give zakat on, not 70. Yeah. Exactly. Like I mentioned a few times, right? Like if the value is not known, if you don't know the exact amount. If you know the exact amount, you will give, if the exact amount is more than 30, you have to give that much too, right? If you are able to determine the exact amount of the zakatable assets of the company, 50, 60, 70%, then you give that much, right? And if you don't know, and if it's difficult for you to figure it out, right? Then, like I said, on average, according to the research of the muftis, who tried to look into this, they found, according to their research, it was between 22 to 25%. So you can give that much, and inshallah, hopefully that will be considered fulfilled. Inshallah.
एक साल गुजरना चाहिए, एक साल के बाद ज़कात अदा करना वाजिब होती।
Okay, so the question, what I'm understanding is how do you determine the date? Is that the question? When do you give it, right? Your date of giving zakat is determined when you become the owner of nisab, right? 1 year from there. So example, we've been taking, we take, today's date, the 11th of Ramadan. And again, when you take the date, we don't take the English data. So we don't say April 2nd or what's today, April 2nd, right? We don't say April 2nd next year. We will take the Islamic date. So 11th of Ramadan, next year 11th of Ramadan, which will obviously be before April 2nd, right? 10 days before, on approximately. So zakat will be farm. Now, if a person doesn't become owner of nisab, it's not necessary that the day is in Ramadan. Many people give it in Ramadan, but that doesn't mean that it's in Ramadan. Whenever a person becomes the owner of nisab. So throughout the year, if they become the owner of nisab 1 year from then, that will be their date. Now, if someone does not know their day of nisab, how do you determine it, right? How do you figure out when zakat becomes fard on you? So there's two things. If you're able to look back, you look into your finances, you look into your bank account, you try to figure out, you try to get an understanding of when you become the owner of nisab, and you're able to determine that, then of course you follow that, and you try to take whatever your overwhelming thought is, right? Whatever your assumption is that this is probably the day, then you take that day. And for some reason, if someone has absolutely no clue whatsoever, like someone you said, like they've been Muslim for many years, but they haven't been practicing, and it's just very difficult 10 years from to determine when did I become owner of Nisab 10 years ago, right? It's really, really difficult. Then you fix a day, right? And you use that day, and you do that every year after that. Any day, you fix that, and you take that date, and you give annually from then after. Zakat can be given in advance, as we mentioned before. So although in that example you're giving, right, somebody accepts Islam, it's been 6 months, zakat is not fard, but they can give it if they want right now, right? And then they will reduce that or deduct that from the amount that they're supposed to give when the year ends. So if they want, they can give it, but it's not fard for them to give now. It becomes fard after the year. Yes. I- If you use the credit card, whatever balance you own a credit card, that's considered a debt that you owe, you can reduce that too.
बस वो क्रेडिट कार्ड यूज़ ज़रूरी चीज़ों में किया हो तो हाँ
If you owe any money, you can deduct that, right? I'm not going like Monona said, I'm not going to get into discussion whether it's permissible or not, right? But if you owe someone money, that's considered a debt, you can reduce that, which includes credit cards. If you haven't received it before your year ends and you don't have it, then you don't give zakat on it yet. If you don't have it, you don't give it.
क्या ज़कात तो नीडी को देना है आपके जहन में जो भी ये है कि ज़्यादा नीडी है तो उनको दे दो
नहीं नहीं सर, सवाल ये कि अगर फैमिली में ही कोई मुस्तहिक हो तो उनको देना चाहिए या किसी और को?
फैमिली को अगर मुस्तहिक है फैमिली तो उसमें देने में दो सवाब है कराबतदारी का भी और ज़कात अदा करने का दो सवाब है
Yes. Yes, so that is what I was saying, right? That OSAP is considered a debt you owe the government, right? If a person is still studying, perhaps they don't owe them right now. They owe them after they finish their study, right? Or maybe they owe them in between. That's why I mentioned in between that, uh, like when it comes to zakat, sometimes people can say that I owe, right? But at the same time, they're living life perfectly fine, spending perfectly fine, right? So giving $100 or $200 zakat once a year is not really a burden upon them. Technically, if they want, it's a loan, it's a debt, they can deduct it, right? Yes, they can, right? But that's what I was mentioning, that maybe if a person has, this feeling and they don't need to deduct it, then it would be better if they don't, right? Because everything else will do perfectly fine. So when it comes to zakat, then we should try to think of what's more beneficial for the poor. right? I've taken a loan. I don't owe back OSAP for another 4 years, right? So and I'm spending perfectly fine. I have a nice car. I'm living everything. So why should I deduct that for the 4 years right now and not give zakat where I'm spending more than that on other things, right? So that's what I was mentioning. But if somebody is actually in need and they want to deduct, then yes, they're in debt. They can do that. Hmm. Yes. You you can't differentiate how much is for who? Right. I see. Yeah, yeah. It won't be on the whole thing if the other child is also owner, right? Then it won't be on the whole thing. So that'll be up to you to try to determine how much the first one has, how much the second one has,
खुद
right?
तो तय कर सकते हैं ना, लम्स अमाउंट देते हैं, लेकिन खुद तो आप नियत कर सकते हैं कि ये इतना इसका है और इतना इसका।
And perhaps it would be better just to keep separate accounts, right? Just to avoid that. If it's possible to make two different accounts, meaning on different names instead of having it together, just to separate the two so you avoid this confusion. That would probably be even better. Yeah. Yeah, that's the one I just mentioned. Yes.
वही मैंने कहा ना।
Yeah, that's the one I mentioned. That we are still, yes, of course. But if someone didn't, right, then I was going to say you'll have to figure it out. Yeah. Okay, so according to us, right, according to Hanafiya, you can give zakat to organizations, meaning for them to use on their functions, right? For example, we have a masjid here, we have the SMA here. If somebody gives zakat to the SMA and the SMA uses the zakat for general expenses, for running the masjid, for running the organization, that is not acceptable. The zakat must be given to individuals who are in need and they must be made owners of that money. So what happens sometimes is, as you mentioned, like the SMA, they do collect zakat, right? But they don't collect zakat for their expenses. They collect zakat and they take responsibility, so they become your representative and they take responsibility of distributing your zakat to the needy. That is fine. You can do that. So that answers your second question. If there's a family member who says, okay, give it to me, I'll discharge it, I'll distribute it. That's absolutely fine. They can become your representative and they can distribute it for you, which is what the organizations do. So if there's an organization, like, there are many charitable organizations, Islamic Relief, or, these organizations that take the responsibility, where they say we are collecting zakat. If they are saying that they are collecting zakat to distribute to the poor, absolutely you can give it to them, right? But if you know that they are using the zakat for their general expenses and for their own running, uh, that is not permissible according to us, right? There is a different school of thought, I don't want to get into that, right? But according to us, that is not acceptable, right? You will have to give it to individuals who are in need. So you do your research as much as you can, right? Whatever you can do, as much as background check, and you obviously, like you can't just give blindly, right? Your representative, as long as that person has done the background check, they've done everything, they've determined that yes, this person is eligible. They asked some people and then they gave it, and then by chance if it turns out, then hopefully, so just give me a second. So I'll take it a bit.
मुस्तहिक हम भी नहीं देता नहीं मुस्तहिक नहीं पता तो गारंटी इतना आज है अभी पैसा ले लें तो मुस्तहिक बता देता
So again, like we mentioned, right? If as long as you've done your background check, they've done the background check, right, and they've given it, hopefully that'll be considered fulfilled, right? If the person still has it, and you find out, that this person is not really, and you can tell them, you can ask them for it back, try, if it's possible, then try, you could try that as well. And if that's not possible, and this person has already, used it up or whatever the case may be, then inshallah, hopefully that will be considered accepted. There's another, like, how is this even possible? How is it possible that a person takes it and they don't admit that they are not eligible for zakat, right? You don't have to tell the person you're giving that this is zakat money. You can tell them it's a gift, but you make intention of zakat, right? Just to not to put that person down. Like, a person may feel like I don't want to take zakat, but I am in need. So I have a friend, I have a family member who wants to assist me. They tell me I have a gift for you. I'd like to give you some money. So they give it to me as a gift. I don't know it's zakat. They give it to me as a gift, but they made intention for zakat. That's fine, right? Well, so let's say in that scenario, something like that happens, and then you find out later on that perhaps they weren't eligible, right? As long as you've done your background check, you've done everything, then hopefully, inshallah, that'll be considered accepted. No. Inshallah, that'll be considered done. Inshallah, yeah. These organizations, they normally go out to places, right, where they're like, for example, right now there's brothers who are gone from here to Turkey, who are assisting. Like, they pretty much, it's almost guaranteed, inshallah, right, that it's going to the right people.
नहीं बहन मुस्तहिक होनी चाहिए बहन भी मुस्तहिक होनी चाहिए
Yes. You give zakat on a total amount. It's not an expense. And some people, they try to save up to go for Hajj, right? They save up for other reasons. As long as the money is with you, you haven't used it, it's considered your money, you'll pay zakat on it. Yeah. I didn't understand that. The owner of Nisab, yes, okay. Then no, that most likely won't. May not be like zakat may not be further now.
एंड ऑफ ईयर देखो बीच में मत देखो एंड ऑफ ईयर उसके पास है या नहीं इतना सेविंग अगर सेविंग है निसाब जितना तो फ़र्ज है नहीं है तो नहीं है
You don't look at like in between the year. You won't look at it. If today, if you became owner of Nisab today, just look at the end of the year. That's it. Not not anything in between. If that's the question you're asking. Yeah, as long as you don't go bankrupt, as long as you don't go to zero. If it goes up and down, that's fine. And end of the year, if you still have Nisab, then you give zakat.
चलिए दुआ कर लीजिए.
You can't pay on behalf of someone with their permission. You have to take their permission for that. Yeah, yeah. You can give it to you can give it on their behalf with their permission. You can't give it without their permission. If they say like give it on my behalf, then that's fine. You can do that. If the brothers or anyone still has questions, you can always call in. Our imams alhamdulillah are available. You can always email us well, inshallah.
ठीक है दुआ कर लें. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. اللهم وفقنا لما تحب وترضى واجعل آخرتنا خيرا من الأولى. اللهم بارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا شر ما قضيت. اللهم بارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا شر ما قضيت. اللهم بارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا شر ما قضيت. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه سيدنا محمد وآله وأصحابه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.